Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 373. This is my second podcast of 2026. I hope you guys have been able to catch up on my past podcast because we're going to keep the ball rolling today. We've been talking pretty much, telling the same story and talking about the same subject for weeks now, and I'm just going to keep going, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast. If you haven't had an opportunity to listen to past podcasts, you can do so by visiting my YouTube page, my X page. It's all down below. You can see the links to the Rumble page, the Apple Podcasts, the Substack. Substack has everything. That's just the one that just came up there underneath me. So yeah, you can go back and you can look at all the past podcasts. I've been going in kind of chronological order, telling the history of the Jewish people, starting with before the Babylonian captivity. Now we're in the Babylonian captivity. We've been talking about the destruction of Solomon's temple by Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian exile, Nebuchadnezzar bringing 7,000 to 10,000 citizens of Kingdom of Judah back to Babylon. And in the last podcast and the last couple of podcasts, we've been talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon. He is the second king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. His father, Nabopolassar, is the one who conquers the Neo-Assyrian Empire, and he starts the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and then his son comes to power, and he's the greatest of the Neo-Babylonian kings, Nebuchadnezzar II. He destroys the temple, Solomon's temple in Judea, lays waste to the kingdom of Judea. And I explained to you that that was all divine punishment. It's all there in the scriptures. God says that he's going to destroy Judah. And he's going to destroy Judah because they were practicing witchcraft, worshiping pagan gods. They have basically broken the covenant with their God, and God says that he's going to punish them. So anyway, the exiles are back in Babylon, and we've explained to you that the purpose of bringing all of these prominent people from the kingdom of Judah back to Babylon is to make them Babylonian. He wanted them to forget their culture, forget their heritage, forget their Jewish identity, and become Babylonian. And that was the real challenge for them, to maintain their Jewish culture, even though the temple was gone, even though they're not in Jerusalem and in Judah anymore. They've been scattered as God told them that he would do if they were disobedient. Maintaining their Jewish culture was the task. And we talked about Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. We talked about Hananiah, Hananiah, and Azariah. Their names being changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This is all in an effort to make them Babylonian. So now we're in the second chapter. Let's get back into Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. He calls his sorcerers, his enchanters, his magicians, his astrologers. He tells them that I want you to interpret this dream, but before you interpret the dream, I'm not going to tell you what the dream is. You tell me what the dream is that I had, and then I want you to interpret it. None of them can do it. He's going to kill them all, Nebuchadnezzar, because they're useless to him. They can't interpret his dream, tell him what the dream was. So he's going to kill them all. Daniel, who is Jewish, one of the Jewish exiles, he asked Nebuchadnezzar to give him the opportunity to pray to his God to find out what the dream is. And he comes back and he interprets the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, tells him what the dream was, interprets the dream for him. And we played this clip, which goes into explaining what the dream was. Take a listen.
There is a God in heaven who reveals secrets and has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head were these. You were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all crushed together and became like chaff. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
So you have 6 kingdoms here. You have the gold kingdom, the silver kingdom, the bronze kingdom, the iron kingdom. The iron and clay represents a kingdom, which is an extension of the iron kingdom, but it's something different because it's mixed with clay. We talked about this in the last podcast, but then you also have this 6th kingdom. This 6th kingdom is represented by this rock that hits the statue and destroys the entire statue. And then this 6th kingdom grows to be a mountain, and that's God's kingdom that is going to last forever. And Daniel, again, it tells him what the dream is and then interprets what the dream means, that these are going to be 6 different kingdoms. Your kingdom is the gold kingdom, the purest kingdom, but there's going to be a less pure kingdom that comes after you. And it's going to be stronger. Same thing with bronze, the iron, the represented kingdom. We talked about the fact that they tell you in the text that these first 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Babylon, and we're going to talk about the Medo-Persian Empire conquering the kingdom of Babylon. We're going to talk about that today. And then as we go along, we'll talk about the Macedonian Greek Empire conquering the Persian Empire, and so on. We've talked about the Roman Empire already. And in the last podcast, we talked about the kingdom of iron mixed with clay. And I was explaining in the last podcast that the kingdom of iron mixed with clay, you can see here that in this image that it has the Babylonian kingdom and the period that the Babylonian kingdom ruled. And then you have the Medo-Persian kingdom, and it has the period that they ruled. And then the Macedonian Greek Empire in the period that they ruled, and then the Roman Empire. I mean, again, I don't think these dates are necessarily accurate because I don't think the Roman Empire ended in 395. I've gone through all of that, but you can see the dates there. But you can see the question marks here about the kingdom of iron mixed with clay. And I was explaining in the last podcast, the reason that there's question marks here is because there's so many theories. People don't know what this is, what the iron mixed with clay is. And I was in the last podcast, I was explaining my theory of why I believe that it is democracy. And I want to hash this out just a little bit more because I introduced this at the end of the last podcast, but I want to just say that I wasn't saying that democracy is necessarily bad or good in my belief that democracy represents the kingdom of iron mixed with clay. I wasn't making a judgment on if democracy is better than monarchy or if monarchy is better than democracy. In both cases, I would think that that monarchy has some pros and cons, and democracy has some pros and cons. Democracy is not perfect. Democracy has some inherent weaknesses, things that make it weak. Now, it may be better than monarchy, especially when you're talking about human monarchies. That's why I think that that Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, that this that this last kingdom is not going to be a human kingdom, that you're not going to have to worry about a king or a monarch that has human nature. This is going to be a divine kingdom. So you're not going to have to worry about human nature, because the same things that make a monarchy weak and feeble are the things that make a democracy weak and feeble. It's because they're all human institutions, and humanity's flawed. I mean, there's been so many of our founders were, and even up into Eisenhower. If you go and you look at Eisenhower's, if you listen to what Eisenhower is saying in his farewell address in January 1961, in that farewell address, he's saying that for us to be a good nation and a good people, we have to be religious. We have to be moral. For our democracy to work, we have to be informed, he says, but we have to be a moral people that pursues the best things for all people. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, but you go back and listen to what Eisenhower. But Eisenhower is not the only one American president, or many of the founders in America says that democracy is only going to work as long as the people are moral, as long as the people are faithful and believe in God. Many of them says this. Alexis de Tocqueville. I mean, many others said that is when we become a immoral people, then democracy itself is going to be subject to the weaknesses of the democracy, because the people are immoral. Same thing with, if you have an immoral monarch, then the kingdom that this king rules over is going to have problems because you have an immoral monarch. But if you have a decent monarch, and there have been plenty in history, decent monarchs who cared for the people, wanted to have the best interests of the people, then then the productivity and the prosperity of the kingdom, I mean, it could be ideal. So it's not the system of monarchy versus the system of democracy, that both systems have their inherent weaknesses, and that is their human institutions. So that's all I wanted to get at and make clear, that I wasn't saying that that monarchies are better than democracies by my belief that democracy is the clay in the statue, the feet, iron mixed with clay. And it's just my theory. Who knows what this is, but I just wanted kind of to clear that up, that I wasn't making a case that monarchies are better than democracies. Okay. So the Babylonian captivity, we talked about that in the last podcast. We were also talking about the Avian papacy, which is also called the Babylonian captivity. And I was explaining that the reason that the Avian papacy, when the Pope was in Avian, France, and being basically controlled by the King of France in this period of time in the 14th century, that the Babylonian captivity, as far as the Pope being in Avian, was 67 years, around 70 years. And I was saying, well, I believe that that's the reason one of the reasons that they started calling it the Babylonian captivity, because the real Babylonian captivity, the captivity of the Jews being exiled into Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar, that lasted 70 years. 70 years exactly is what it lasted. And the transition from the gold empire, the gold kingdom that was represented by Babylon, and the silver kingdom that is represented by the Medo-Persian Empire, the transfer of power from Babylon to the Medo-Persian Empire, it is talked about in the latter half of the book of Daniel. And it starts in the fifth chapter, but we're going to read here a little bit of the 9th chapter and Daniel's prayer. Daniel well, we'll just read here and I'll explain what Daniel is doing. So this is the 9th chapter of the book of Daniel. It says, in the first year of Darius, son of Xerxes, a Mede by descent. So Darius is a Mede. He's son of Xerxes, and he is Mede. He's not Persian. And what Cyrus does is that he creates an alliance between the Medes and the Persians. The first year of Darius, son of Xerxes, a Mede by descent, who was made ruler of Babylon kingdom. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood from scriptures, according to the word that the Lord had given Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last 70 years. So what's happening here is Daniel is reading the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a Jewish prophet that was prophesying over the kingdom of Judah prior to the siege of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar and the destruction of the temple. Jeremiah prophesies about all of that because of your wickedness, because of your worshiping pagan gods and practicing witchcraft and all that God is going to send someone to punish you, Nebuchadnezzar. You're going to go into exile, and you're going to be in exile for 70 years. So Jeremiah prophesies about that. When Daniel is taken into Babylon, he's still a young man, but later in life, when he's there in exile in Babylon, he starts reading Jeremiah's words. He starts reading what Jeremiah wrote, and it says here, in the first year of his reign, the reign of Darius, that Daniel, understood from scriptures. I was reading the scriptures according to the word given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last 70 years. So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition and fasting and sackcloth and ashes. So what's happening here, and this is the passage from Jeremiah. Let's read a little bit of Jeremiah. So this is Jeremiah, which he is a prophet that preceded Daniel, and he wrote prophesying about everything that was going to happen with the Babylonian captivity, saying it was going to last 70 years. And this is Jeremiah before Daniel, 25th chapter, 70 years of captivity. The word came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, which was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So Jeremiah the prophet said to all of the people of Judah, he's prophesying to the people of Judah before the destruction of the temple, before the siege of Jerusalem. Jeremiah is prophesying to them. So Jeremiah prophesied to the people of Judah and to all those living in Jerusalem for 23 years, from the 13th year of Josiah, son of Ammon, king of Judah, until this very day. The word of the Lord has come to me, and I have spoken to you again and again. I told you again and again, but you have not listened. And though the Lord has sent all of his servants and prophets, all the prophets that came before me, this is what Jesus told him too. When he says, you killed the prophets. You didn't listen to the prophets. And though the Lord has sent all the servants and prophets to you again and again, you have not listened or paid attention. He's telling this to the whole nation of Israel, or the whole nation of Judah, kingdom of Judah, telling them, you haven't listened. You've turned from God. They said now, and they said, turn now each of you from your evil ways. That's what God is telling you. And you can stay in the land the Lord has given you. We've read all this before. We read in Deuteronomy where Moses is saying this. We read in Kings. We read in Leviticus where God is telling them that if you do right, you stay in the land, you be prosperous. If not, you turn from me, start worshiping other gods, then Babylonian captivity is going to happen. Assyrian's captivity is going to happen. This is divine punishment. Do not follow other gods. Do not serve or worship them. Do not arouse my anger with what your hands have made. I will not harm you. So, this is the passage that Daniel is reading while he's in Babylon. And it said that the Babylonian captivity is going to happen, The exile is going to happen, but it's only going to last 70 years. He says right here, 12th verse. But when the 70 years are fulfilled, I will punish the king of Babylon and his nation and the land of the Babylonians for their guilt, declares the Lord, and I will make it desolate. So after the 70-year period, I'm going to destroy Babylon, is what Jeremiah writes. So Daniel is in Babylon and the 70 years are up. This is later in Daniel's life while he's exiled in Babylon. He starts reading Jeremiah and he realizes the 70 years are up. This is 70 years. So it says right here, we're back in Daniel, 9th chapter, book of Daniel. So I'm so giddy about this because I think that this is so, and I haven't even scratched the surface yet, but I mean, this is some fascinating stuff to me. So back to the third verse of the 9th chapter of Daniel. So I figured out, I'm reading Jeremiah. I realized the 7 years are up. So I turned to the Lord and I pleaded with him in prayer and petition, fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. And this is what Daniel is praying when he realizes the 70 years are up. I prayed to the Lord, my God, and confess, Lord, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant. You said it's going to be 7 years. You keep your covenant. That who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keeps his commandments. We have sinned and done wrong. Who's he talking about? When Daniel says we have sinned and done wrong, he's pleading with God because the 70 years are up. He says, we have sinned and done wrong. You know, if you can read the book of Daniel and read about Daniel, there's not a single sin that Daniel did that is recorded in all of scripture that you can look and say, Daniel did that sin. You can look and see the sin that David did with Bathsheba and Uriah. You can look and see the sin that Manasseh did. And you can look and see, the sin that even Moses did, and other figures in the Bible where their sins are recorded. Daniel, there's no sin recorded of him, but he's pleading for the people of Judah when he says, we have sinned and done wrong. We have been wicked and we have rebelled and we have turned away from your commandments and laws. We have not listened to your servants or your prophets. He's reading Jeremiah and we just read what Jeremiah says, and he's repeating to God in his prayer the same thing that Jeremiah said before the Babylonian captivity even happened. Before the temple was destroyed, Jeremiah's telling them this is going to happen to you. Daniel's years later, while he's exiled in Babylon, reading what Jeremiah says, and he's repeating that we have sinned, we have done wrong, we have been wicked. The whole nation of Judah, all the Jews, we have turned away from your commandments and laws. We have not listened to your servants and prophets. We have who have spoke in your name to our kings, our princes, our ancestors, and to all the people of the land. Lord, you are righteous, but this day we are covered with shame. Who? We are covered with shame. All the Jewish people, we are covered with shame. That's why we received this divine punishment of this exile. We are covered with shame. The people of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem and all of Israel, both near and far, and all the countries where you have scattered us. Going back to Deuteronomy, God promises them, when you break the covenant, you're going to be scattered. So we have shame, is what Daniel's saying. All of us who have been scattered, even the northern 10 tribes who were scattered by the Assyrians before us, all of us, we have shame. In all the countries where you have scattered us because of our unfaithfulness to you. We and our kings and our princes and ancestors are covered with shame. Lord, because we have sinned against you, the Lord our God is merciful and forgiving. Even though we have rebelled against him, we have not obeyed the Lord our God or kept his laws he gave us through his servants and prophets. All of Israel has transgressed your law and turned away, refusing to obey you. Therefore, the curse and sworn judgments, the curse and sworn judgment, the curse. Folks, going back to Genesis 12, that they keep repeating to you over and over again, that we have to support Israel because the Bible says those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who cursed Israel would be cursed. God cursed Israel. God cursed them. This is repeated over and over again in the scriptures. Therefore, the curse and the sworn judgments written in the law of Moses, in Deuteronomy, we've read it, in Leviticus, and the servants of God have been poured out on us because we have sinned against you. You have fulfilled the words spoken against us and against our rulers by bringing us great disaster under the whole heaven. Nothing has ever been done like what has been done to Jerusalem. So basically, Daniel he was reading Jeremiah. He realizes that the 70 years are up, and he starts praying and telling God, look, we realize that we messed up. I realize that we messed up, but you said, you promised it was going to be 70 years, and 70 years please bring us out of this exile, is what Daniel starts pleading. I don't have time to read it all. Please go and read the 9th chapter of Daniel. But he's pleading with God to keep his end of the bargain. You said through the prophet Jeremiah, it was only going to be 70 years. The 70 years are up to allow us to go back to Jerusalem and to honor you, to rebuild the temple and honor you. And God, he keeps his agreement that it's only going to be 70 years. And that's why 70 years is all that the Babylonian exile lasts. It only lasts for 70 years. And God's plan to free the people of Judah and allow them to go back to Jerusalem to honor God and rebuild the temple is this ruler, Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great becomes the leader of the Persians. He creates an alliance with the Median Empire, and they conquer the Babylonians. And this is all recorded in the book of Daniel and in many other places in the Bible. Cyrus the Great, also known as the Cyrus the Great, the Aryan. That's where the word Iran comes from. Aryan, Iran. A lot of people say Iran. It's not Iran. It's Iran, Aryan. That's where Cyrus is buried to this day. You can go to Iran and see the tomb of Cyrus. To this day, his bones are there, and you know, he's the first king of the Persians, the first Aryan king, and he comes to power and he conquers Babylon, just like Nebuchadnezzar's dream says. Cyrus the Great and the Medo-Persian Empire, represented by the gold medal in the statue. Cyrus the Great comes to power in the middle of the 6th century BC. And that is all recorded in the scriptures. It's recorded in many places, but it's recorded in the Hebrew scriptures in Daniel chapter 5. And the night that the Persians conquer the Babylonians is this story in the 5th chapter of the book of Daniel. And it's the writing on the wall. I have a few clips about this passage, the 5th chapter in the book of Daniel, that I want to play that kind of describe what's going on there. And let's take a look.
It was the 12th of October in the year 539 BC, just over 3,550 years ago. And it was during the reign of the Babylonian monarch Belshazzar. And this king, well, he knew how to party. He loved to party. And one night, he organized a big party. And what a party it was. The king's lords, his wives, his concubines, over 1,000 of them, not only drinking wine, but drinking it from the sacred vessels that had been part of the ancient Jewish temple in Jerusalem.
All right, so this is important. So if you go to the 1st chapter of the book of Daniel, we went over this in previous podcasts. If you haven't seen them, please go back and watch them. But we talked about how the siege of Jerusalem for Nebuchadnezzar, it went in 3 stages, and it lasted for nearly 20 years until the final stage where he destroys the entire city and destroys the temple and everything. But he had, executed before that siege, he had executed 2 other previous sieges of Jerusalem. In the first siege of Jerusalem, when he first surrounds Jerusalem, he forces the king at that time, Jehoiakim, to give him prisoners to take back to Babylon. He doesn't sack the city, but he forces the king to give him these prisoners. And those were the young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's the first siege. And the second siege, when he comes back, he surrounds the city and they open the gates for him. He doesn't have to destroy the city, open the gates. And then Nebuchadnezzar comes in and then he ransacks the temple. And he goes to the temple and he takes all of these gold artifacts and these, gold chalices and all of these artifacts from the temple. And he takes them back to Babylon to showcase them. And then in the third siege is when he destroys the city, destroys the temple. Where those artifacts from the temple, the chalices, the bowls, all of that stuff, that they were in Babylon, and Belshazzar, who was ruling at this time, this is later when in Daniel's life, he's an old man at this time. This is after Nebuchadnezzar's already died. This is the 5th ruler in the dynasty, the Neo-Babylonian dynasty. So Nebuchadnezzar's already gone. Daniel is gone from a young exile in Babylon to an old man exiled in Babylon. And Belshazzar, the night that he's having this party, he says, go get those artifacts that Nebuchadnezzar brought back from Judah that he stole out of the temple, and let's party with those. So they start drinking their wine, partying with the artifacts from the temple, and that's what's going on here.
Party it was. The king's lords, his wives, his concubines, over 1,000 of them, not only drinking wine, but drinking it from the sacred vessels that had been part of the ancient Jewish temple in Jerusalem, pillaged decades earlier by his grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar. Amid all the sacrilege and revelry, an event occurred that brought all festivities to an immediate halt. A mysterious hand appeared and in fiery letters wrote a chilling message on the wall of the king's palace. If you ever wondered where the phrase, the handwriting on the wall, originated, well, here it is.
And that's an idiom that we use very commonly today, that the handwriting was on the wall. The handwriting was on the wall, and the use of that, it goes back century, and it goes back to this story that a hand out of nowhere starts writing some text that Belshazzar and the people there partying, they didn't understand what it said, and then Belshazzar, he starts freaking out. I mean, of course, when you start freaking out, if you see a hand out of nowhere starts writing, text on a wall, and you don't understand what it means. So he's perplexed. Everybody else, that kind of stops the party. This is all in the 5th chapter of the book of Daniel. He's trying to figure out what it is, just like Nebuchadnezzar, when Nebuchadnezzar has his dream and he brings all the sorcerers and magicians and astrologers to come interpret the dream. That's the same thing that Belshazzar did. He called all of the Magi, the Chaldeans, the sorcerers, magicians, astrologers. And he says, interpret these words that are written on the wall. None of them could interpret it. None of them could understand it. And then one of his wives says, you remember that your grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, there's this guy who interpreted his dream he's one of the Jewish exiles. By this time, Daniel had been forgotten about and no one really cared about him. But the one of the wives of Belshazzar remembers Daniel and says, yeah, there's this guy who interpreted your grandfather's dreams. He is close with the gods. He's able to interpret this stuff. You should call him. So Belshazzar calls Daniel, and then Daniel comes into the party. He looks at the wall, and then he immediately tells Belshazzar what it means. And this is a clip that goes into what Daniel tells him that the words mean.
And then Daniel reads and interprets the handwriting on the wall. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, the 12th of October, 539 BC, while Belshazzar and his friends partied, the enemy attacked. The ancient historians Herodotus and Xenophon record that the river was low after the hot summer, and the invaders cleverly lowered it further by diverting some of the water. The Persian soldiers waded into the now knee-deep stream. When they came to the mighty river gates, they found them unguarded and open, just as the prophecy in Isaiah predicted 200 years before. Cyrus took the city of Babylon with scarcely a fight. And that very night, King Belshazzar lost his life and his kingdom.
It wasn't Belshazzar's kingdom, technically. And I think that this is very interesting, that Belshazzar was not the king. He was not the rightful king. This guy was. Nabonidus. Belshazzar was Nabonidus' son. In the text in Daniel, it doesn't say anything about Nabonidus at all. It says King Belshazzar. That's what it says in Daniel 5. You can see it starts right here. King Belshazzar. Doesn't say anything about Nabonidus, but Nabonidus was the legitimate king, not Belshazzar. Belshazzar was his son. And I want you to listen to this clip about why Belshazzar is mentioned in the book of Daniel and not Nabonidus. It's very important. I think this is fascinating. Now, one thing I also want to point out before we tell the story about Nabonidus. Now, we talked about this a little bit before, but the patron god of Babylon is Marduk. We talked about this. Marduk is an Anunnaki god, and he's the patron deity of Babylon. Not only was he the patron deity of Babylon during the reign of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the worship of Marduk as the patron deity of Babylon goes back to Hammurabi, to the original Babylonian Empire. Marduk is the patron deity of Babylon. Marduk's son is Nabu, who is also an Anunnaki god. And in the Anunnaki pantheon, Nabu is the deity that is the son of Marduk. So Marduk and Nabu are the two most important deities in Babylon. Not only in Neo-Babylon, going back to ancient Babylon and the founding of the Babylonian Empire under Hammurabi. So if you look at the Babylonian kings in the Neo-Babylonian dynasty, they all have either the name Nabu or Marduk in their name. Nebuchadnezzar's father, Nabopolassar. Nebuchadnezzar II was named after his grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar. Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar. Amu Marduk. Neri Glassler was a usurper. He was the father-in-law of Amu Marduk. So he usurped. So that's why he doesn't have the name Nabu or Marduk, but then he names his son Labashe Marduk, and then Nabonidus. So Nabu Marduk. So you see that in all their names. Nebuchadnezzar is Nabuchadnezzar. Nabopolassar is his father. Amu Marduk. Labashe Marduk. Nabonidus was the rightful king, but in Daniel 5, it says Belshazzar was the king of Babylon. Well, this is the reason that it says that Belshazzar was the king of Babylon when the Persians conquered Babylon, is because Belshazzar was left there to rule by his father, Nabonidus. Take a listen.
Babylon's last native king, Nabonidus. Though Nabonidus may have manipulated his way into becoming the next ruler of Babylon, once he became king, he seems to have had little interest in actually doing the job. Instead of managing the Neo-Babylonian Empire, he went on pilgrimages and spiritual retreats for the sole purpose of worshipping the moon god, Sin.
So Nabonidus was in a cult. Basically, he becomes king and then he starts following the Sin cult all around the empire. And he was more interested in the cult of Sin than ruling the Babylonian Empire.
Spiritual retreats for the sole purpose of worshipping the moon god, Sin. In fact, Nabonidus was so focused on this that he appointed his son, Belshazzar, better known as Belshazzar, to rule as regent while he was away, which according to Babylonian chronicles and other documents was quite often.
Babylonian chronicles and other documents. This is, okay, so yeah, in the book of Daniel, it says that it's Belshazzar. It doesn't say anything about Nabonidus in the book of Daniel. But in other texts, and there are many other texts, we can see that Nabonidus was the true king, and he basically was in this cult, the cult of Sin, and he would go all around the empire, and he left his son, Belshazzar, to rule. And then it only says that Belshazzar was the king in Daniel, but he wasn't the legitimate king. He was just, left there as regent by his father, while his father went and chased the cult of Sin.
Really in the spring of his third year as king, or 553 BC, Nabonidus went on a campaign that took him into northern Arabia, where he ended up at the oasis of Tema. Using the town as a base, Nabonidus claims he spent 10 years there, worshipping Sin, and living a rather monastic life for a king.
All right, so that's why Belshazzar is named the king in Daniel 5, is because basically his father left him there to rule, but his father was the rightful king. But he's king when the Persians come in and they conquer Babylon. There are several other texts that talk about this, not only the Hebrew texts in the book of Daniel and many other parts of the Hebrew Bible, but you also have texts like these artifacts, the Nabonidus Chronicle. The Nabonidus Chronicle is an artifact with tons of cuneiform script, and you can read the cuneiform script. It talks about, you can see where Nabonidus Chronicle is an ancient Babylonian text, part of a large series of Babylonian chronicles inscribed in cuneiform script on clay tablets. They deal primarily with the reign of Nabonidus, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and covers the conquest of Babylon by the Persians and King Cyrus, and the end and the start of the reign of Cyrus's son. So it's not only there in the book of Daniel and in the Hebrew text. We have texts like this written in cuneiform on artifacts like the Nabonidus Chronicle. You also have the Seal of Cyrus. The Seal of Cyrus is another artifact with cuneiform text written all over it. And once you're able to read cuneiform, you can read exactly what's written there. I mean, these are like books. These artifacts, the Nabonidus Chronicle and many of these other artifacts written that have cuneiform text in it, the Cyrus Cylinder, these are like books. You can read what's on there, except the parts that are missing, but there's still enough there they can tell you. What does it say here? The Cyrus Cylinder is an ancient clay cylinder known, broken into several pieces, on which is written the Achaemenid royal inscription of the Akkadian in Akkadian cuneiform script in the name of the Persian king Cyrus the Great. The dates are from the 6th century BC and was discovered in the ruins of the Mesopotamian city of Babylon in 1879. We didn't discover this until 1879. It is currently a possession of the British Museum, like all of these great artifacts the British have. There's some in France as well, but the British have most of these. It was created and used as the foundation deposit following the Persian conquest of Babylon. So on the Cyrus cylinder, it talks about the conquest of Babylon. It also, if you come down here, it says the cylinder's text has traditionally been seen by biblical scholars as corroborative evidence of, so this corroborates what's in the book of Daniel. This corroborates what's in the other Hebrew text, the seal of Solomon, the Cyrus cylinder. The cylinder's text has traditionally been seen by biblical scholars as corroborative evidence of Cyrus's policy of redemption of the Jewish people following the Babylonian captivity. So that's what's written here on this artifact in cuneiform. You also have, other artifacts that talk about this. It's not only in the book of Daniel corroborating all this. I want you to listen to this clip about the seal of Solomon or the Cyrus cylinder. I think it's important.
This is probably the first moment in history that we know of a ruler thinking about how he's going to manage a multicultural state.
I think so. That's very important what he's saying, that when you read what's on the Cyrus cylinder and what Cyrus is saying on this cylinder, that this is the first time that a ruler is thinking about how he's going to manage a multicultural state. What he's saying is hugely important, because what Cyrus talks about on the cylinder is how when he comes into Babylon, he doesn't get rid of the Babylonian gods, Nabu and Marduk. It says there on the cylinder that he embraces Marduk as his own god. He's not going to get rid of the patron deity of Babylon. He's going to incorporate the patron deity in Babylon into his Persian empire. That's what Cyrus does. He incorporates everything that Cyrus conquers. He doesn't get rid of these people. He incorporates those people into the Persian Empire and makes them part of this new empire. That's why you have multiculturalism throughout the empire. I mean, it's still an empire and a kingdom. The rules and the laws flow from the top, but he allows everyone to keep their same gods, to worship how they want to worship. As long as they don't go against the monarchy, then everyone is invited, and he's trying to incorporate this diversity, equity, and inclusion. Centuries ago, Cyrus the Great wanted to bring DEI into the empire. So that's what is on the seal of Cyrus, is that he's talking about how he's going to allow everyone to honor their gods. If it's the Jewish God, that's why he allows the Jews to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. You go do your God, your thing. Here in Babylon, you guys want to worship Marduk and Nabu. You do your thing. All the other places, if you look at the titles, you go back to Cyrus the Great and look at his titles. He was the great king of Persia, king of Anshan, king of Media, king of Babylon, king of Sumer, king of Akkad, king of four corners of the world. The Nabonidus Chronicle notes the change in his title from king of Ashan to king of Persia. He was the king of the Aryans. He was, he had all of these different titles because he was basically ruling over a multicultural empire, and Cyrus wanted to respect everybody's different culture. So that's what's on the seal of Cyrus. That's what he's talking about here.
This is probably the first moment in history that we know of a ruler thinking about how he's going to manage a multicultural state. The object behind me is known as the Cyrus cylinder, and it's made of baked clay, and it was buried at the foundation of a building in Babylon about 2,600 years ago. In fact, in 539 BC. And what it is a declaration by the king of Persia, Cyrus, who has just conquered Babylon. And he's telling us what he's going to do. Babylon in 539 is ruled by Belshazzar. And Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar, the kings of Babylon, are the kings who had sacked Jerusalem, brought the Jews to Babylon, imprisoned them, brought all kinds of other people to Babylon and imprisoned them. And Cyrus, the king of Persia, is going to set the people free. What he's going to do is allow people to go home and resume their religious life. Different religions, different people in different places. The Persian Empire is the first empire to have to run in different languages and to accommodate different faiths. So it's always been a point of reference. Cyrus has always been a point of reference to people wondering how you rule a society with different religions, different traditions, without people fighting. So he's very important to us today because all our big cities have people of different religions, different languages. But he's particularly important to the United States because in the 18th century, when the founding fathers are thinking, how will we make a country where different faiths are all respected, but there's no state religion, they look to Cyrus. And Thomas Jefferson studies Cyrus. He tells his grandson to study Cyrus. And the US Constitution is in some ways the direct descendant of this cylinder.
I think that's so important that the United States Constitution in some ways is a direct descendant. I was using the phrase Medo-Greek Empire in the last podcast, and I realized that that's not a common term. It's kind of like Greco-Roman. So what that means is that, that from the Medo-Persian Empire into the Greek Empire, just like the Greco-Roman is from the Greek Empire into the Roman Empire. And what you need to understand about all of these different empires in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, that when the Persians come to power, they don't get rid of everything from the Babylonian Empire. Some of the Babylonian Empire is incorporated into the Persian Empire. And then when the Greeks come to power, they incorporate parts of the Babylonian Empire and parts of the Medo-Persian Empire into the Greek Empire. They don't get rid of everything. They incorporate parts into the Greek Empire. And then when the Romans come into power, the Romans incorporate some of all three, some of the Babylonian Empire, some of the Persian Empire, some of the Greek Empire is incorporated into into the Roman Empire, and then so on. In this final empire that is the iron mixed with clay, there's Babylon in this, there's Persia in this, there's Greek in this, and absolutely Roman in this. That all of this is incorporated into all the way from the head down to the toe. They don't get rid of it, they incorporate it. And that's what the seal of Cyrus, or Cyrus's cylinder, is about, and what it's talking about.
Faiths are all respected, but there's no state religion. They look to Cyrus. And Thomas Jefferson studies Cyrus. He tells his grandson to study Cyrus. And the US Constitution is in some ways the direct descendant of this cylinder. I hope that the visitor will, looking at this object, will understand that for any Iranian, this is part of their great history. Just as any Italian knows he's the heir of the Roman Empire, every Iranian knows they are the heir of Cyrus.
And Persians, if you know any Persians, they'll tell you many of them do not like the mullahs and the Islamists. The mullahs and the Islamists took over Persia in the 8th, 9th century, and they made it a Islamic country. I mean, you don't really have the Islamic Revolution there until the 1970s, but the Persian people will tell you our history goes back centuries before the Islamists took over, that we have a rich history and a rich culture that dates back to Cyrus the Great. And many of them resent the Islamists, and the Islamists, the mullahs, have just taken over Iran. We helped them with what we did in 1953, but that's another story. Anyway, So all of this is talked about in the scriptures, in the Hebrew scriptures, but it's also confirmed in other artifacts that are written in cuneiform, like the Nabonidus Chronicle, many others, this Cyrus Cylinder. There's some other passages in the Hebrew text that talk about Cyrus and him freeing the people from Babylon, the Jewish people, allowing them to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. This is one. Second Chronicles, the 36th chapter, goes in through all the history that we've covered in this podcast. Jehoahaz, the reign of Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim. Then it comes down here to the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar, the fall of Jerusalem, and then the Babylonian exile in the 20th verse. It's the 36th chapter of the Second Chronicles. And what I want to read starts here at the 22nd verse. It says, in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, 70 years, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm. So to put it in writing, this is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. He has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah, and any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord their God be with them. So this is written in Chronicles that Cyrus gave the proclamation so the people could leave Babylon, the exiles who had been exiled in Babylon for 70 years, to go back to Judah and to rebuild the temple and to rebuild the city of Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. This is another Ezra, the first chapter of the book of Ezra. Cyrus helps exiles to return in the first year of King Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word. It's basically the same thing that we just read in Second Chronicles, but goes into a little bit more detail. In the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm, and also to put in writing. This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build a temple for him. So to rebuild the temple. Solomon's temple had been destroyed. So we're going to rebuild the temple. There's going to be a second temple at Jerusalem in Judah. All of his people among you may go up to Jerusalem and Judah, and to build the temple of the Lord, to the God of Israel, the God of Jerusalem, and may their God be with them. And in any locality where survivors, so this is those who have scattered, this is part of his decree, that those who have scattered even out of Babylon, even the northern 10 tribes, the Jews that have been scattered anywhere, that in any locality where survivors may now be living, the people are to provide them with silver and gold, with goods and livestock, and with farewell offerings for the temple of God in Jerusalem. So Cyrus gives them permission and decrees for the Jews to leave Babylon in exiles and to come from all of the surrounding places where they've been scattered, to come back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. One more. And there's so many of these that I could reference. There's so many passages. This is a great study if you're interested in this. Justice and mercy. This is in Zechariah 7. Zechariah 7 says, in the 4th year of King Darius. Okay, so King Darius is, again, we talked about King Darius a moment ago, he's a Mede. There's right here. In the first year of Darius, son of Xerxes, a Mede by descent. So this makes reference to the reign of Darius in Zechariah chapter 7. It says, in the 4th year of King Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month of Kislev. And then down here, we'll go. I want to show you this. This is still Zechariah's 7th chapter. I don't think this is the passage that I was looking for, or I'm misplacing the part that I wanted to read. Anyway, there's many passages that refer to Cyrus, and Cyrus allowing the people, after he conquers Babylon, allowing the people of Judah to go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And that's what happens. That's the end of the Babylonian captivity. It lasts 70 years. Almost done. I want to play this clip that started going viral last week of one of my, I really like Pastor Hibbs. Jack Hibbs is the pastor of what is it? Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills here in California. And I really like Jack Hibbs. Jack Hibbs is one of the, you would call him a dispensationalist. He would admit to that. He is a Christian Zionist pastor. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says, but this is what I'm saying, that he's a dispensationalist and a Christian Zionist. That's something that he would admit to himself. But he did this interview last week, and it went viral. And I want you to pay attention to what he says here. I think it's very interesting.
The replacement theology individual has a horrific problem with what is called eschatology. That is the study of Bible prophecy. Because all replacement theology people have to put the church in all of the issues of the future of Israel. They take Israel out and they put the church in. So they've got eschatology that is completely messed up. Why? Because they deny the existence of the Jew and Israel, and they cannot exist with their view. And they got a big shock coming. Because they say, for example, the nation of Israel is illegitimate. I'd like to say to them, who gives you the right to say that? May 14th, 1948, Israel became a nation in one day. So Isaiah chapter 66, God said regarding Israel, can a nation be born a second time in one day? And yet, behold, as Israel was in travail, she brought forth her son. Remarkable. No nation in the Bible is said to be born a second time in a day.
No nation, what Jack Hibbs is saying here, he's talking about the nation of Israel being born again. And he's talking about the prophet Jeremiah. We started this talking about that Jeremiah prophesied before the destruction of the first temple, before the Babylonian exile, before Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the kingdom of Judah. And then they go to exile, and then 70 years later, they become a nation again in one day when Cyrus makes the decree for them to return to Israel to build the temple the second time. So Jeremiah, very well, when he says, can a nation be born again for a second time, be talking about the end of the Babylonian exile and the decree of Cyrus for them to come back and rebuild their nation and become a nation again the second day. And people like Jack Hibbs and others, they take that to mean when the nation of Israel was created in one day in 1948, the current nation of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that the current nation of Israel is not relevant, and that that there should be no nation of Israel, and that it's illegitimate, like he says here. But what Jeremiah is talking about, could be very well talking about, is when the nation of Israel is created again for a second time in one day after the Babylonian exile and the Babylonian captivity, when Cyrus gives a decree for them to go back and rebuild the temple for the second time. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We'll get back into this in the next podcast. Have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.